Hey guys, I want to welcome you back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast presented by FanDuel. We have a jam-packed episode for you guys on this Tuesday night. We're going to start with the Milwaukee Bucks Detroit Pistons trade, who is involved, draft picks, what players the Pistons are getting back. We'll also get into the trade exception they did generate from making this trade and the cap space breakdown. Where does this kind of leave the Detroit Pistons with flexibility with their cap space? Segment 2, we'll be getting into a top 10 Bleacher Report ranking that the Detroit Pistons were involved in. Segment 3, we'll be getting into Isaiah Joe and how the Detroit Pistons were able to add him to the team, what cap space maneuvers were made to get Isaiah Joe. Segment 4, we'll be going over Jalen Duren, some key dates and restricted free agency to be on the lookout for. And segment 5, we'll be getting into Ugonna Onyenso. He had a press conference with the Detroit Pistons yesterday. There were 2 questions he was asked in particular. We have the videos from that interview that we're going to be playing on the screen for you guys to listen to. And something I want to talk about at the end of the podcast, because I really like this kid. I think he's a really smart, humble kid, rooting for him. Hopefully, that two-way is not a long-term thing. Maybe he does get, called up to a standard contract, and you make room for the kid, because I think a lot of us are excited about a 7-foot shot blocker with the potential to maybe stretch the floor. Never know. But let's get into the trade. So the Detroit Pistons did make a trade. Now, we later learned from Shams Charania that this was part of a bigger deal, a bigger 6-team trade between the Detroit Pistons, Dallas Mavericks, Los Angeles Clippers, Milwaukee Bucks, Washington Wizards, and the Detroit Pistons. So it was a 6-team trade, but the trade between the Pistons and Bucks was this. Pistons are sending Caris LeVert in 2 future seconds in 2027, and Detroit is getting Taurean Prince and Michigan State's own Gary Harris. So from Shams Charania, so you know it's legit, from ESPN. So you're getting off of Caris LeVert. He had 1 more year left on his mid-level exception and 2 second-round picks, which now you have 11 future second-round picks. So cool. I like this deal because you're getting off of Caris LeVert's money. Now, what I will say with the Caris LeVert experience is it was very underwhelming. Underwhelming offensively. I thought defensively he had some games this year where he played some pretty solid defense. Offensively, he took a drastic drop in production. I don't know if it was just the scheme that we were playing. I don't know if it's he's getting older. He's not the same player he used to be. It obviously did not work in Detroit. Trajan is taking away one of JB Bickerstaff's favorite veterans, one of his favorite players. Kind of doing him a favor if you do ask me. But you're getting Taurean Prince, which let's kind of talk about Taurean Prince. I think he's staying. I think you found your backup power forward. Now, he is a little bit undersized to be playing the backup 4. But I think what is intriguing about Taurean Prince is the 3-point shot making ability. You look at his numbers, 40% from 3 back-to-back seasons. One of the Milwaukee Bucks better players. Obviously, he did not play too many games this past season. I think he played under 30, if I do remember correctly. But overall, throughout his career, he's been relatively healthy. And having a guy that shoots 40% from 3, playing your backup 4 alongside John Collins, I think is a win in itself. Again, I saw a lot of Pistons fans mention who's going to be playing the backup 4, myself included. We thought that we were getting Rui Hachimura. He's going to L.A. Some fans talked about Ron Holland, Javonte Green. I want to talk about Ron Holland and how this actually might kind of affect his minutes possibly. But for Taurean Prince, I like the deal. I do. Gary Harris, on the other hand, I don't know if he's going to be on the roster, because if you look at the shooting guard room, you guys, you have Duncan Robinson, who may start. I'm not sure. I'm just not. Isaiah Joe, who we're going to get into a little bit with how the Pistons actually were able to add him to the cap space and the team. But you have Isaiah Joe, Chaz Lanier, which Chaz Lanier was not really in the pecking order whatsoever. Marcus Sasser, who I'm assuming is still on the team. He could have been part of, a bigger deal with the 6-team trade. It was reported he was getting sent to Dallas, but I haven't seen anything yet. We'll update you guys if we do hear anything with the Marcus Sasser front, but you kind of get what I'm saying. Like Kevin Huerter, like where does like Gary Harris fit in the shooting guard room? I don't think there is any room for Gary Harris. So I could see a waiving by the Detroit Pistons outright, a waive and stretch. That's a possibility too. So Gary Harris, I think it was just kind of like a throw-in piece to make the salaries work, right? But overall, I do like this process. You address a position of need, which was a backup power forward and a guy that shoots pretty good volume from three. And we kind of talk about what was this team's biggest weakness last year. It was three-point shooting. And you look at the team right now, you have Duncan Robinson, who was your best three-point shooter. You have Isaiah Joe, who was one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA last year, especially with OKC coming off the bench most nights. You got Taurean Prince, who is a good three-point shooter, 40% three-point shooter. You have John Collins, who shot 40% from three last year. Like, you addressed more perimeter shooting this year, which I think was a big need for this team. We'll see how it works this upcoming season with the perimeter spacing surrounding Cade and the bench unit. Okay. Ron Holland is an interesting aspect to this trade because you brought back Javonte Green, who's a vet, right? And he was a really big piece of the rotation last year. JB really loved playing Javonte Green a whole lot of minutes. Where does Ron Holland kind of fall in the rotation in the pecking order now? Is he more of a Sar Thompson's backup, a backup small forward? That's a possibility. I don't think there's any room for him at backup power forward if you do decide to keep Taurean Prince, which I think they will. Does Ron Holland's minutes kind of get a little bit muddied up with keeping Javonte Green? And, there's certain lineup combinations that you could throw, Kevin Huerter in at small forward. You could throw Duncan Robinson in at small forward. I really like Ron. I'm still a big fan of Ron Holland, as you guys know. I still believe in the potential. I know some people, I go back and forth in the YouTube comments with you guys. Some people just are not high on Ron Holland offensively. And I can understand it because the jump shot hasn't really produced in the percentages, but I honestly think he's due for another great season. Just turned 21. It's actually his birthday today. Happy birthday, Ron. But I'm interested to see where he's kind of at in the rotation in the pecking order. I know some people are speculating this trade maybe signals a bigger move, maybe a trade for KD, which I just don't see happening. Maybe a trade for Trey Murphy. Again, I don't see happening. I don't really think this signals that the Pistons are gearing up for a bigger move. I think what this really signals, and we'll get into the cap space breakdown with it, is just more of generating more cap space to re-sign Jalen Duren with bird rights. But did want to kind of talk about the players involved. I like the Taurean Prince. I like that you got off Caris LeVert. It only cost you 2 future seconds, and you had to take back an expiring, I believe, of Gary Harris. I don't have his contract pulled up in front of me, but I'm pretty sure he's not on a big deal. So again, I like the trade. You did generate a trade exception as well. Let's kind of go over that. This was a cost-cutting move for the Pistons. They save money and create flexibility. So they'll be saving $7.2 million in payroll by trading Caris LeVert to Milwaukee. And they have created a 14.8 trade exception that they can use in future trades, or maybe possibly this week, because it seems like there's been a lot of trades happening during this free agency period. But you did create a trade exception by dealing Caris LeVert. Again, I do like this trade. I like the process of getting off a Caris and adding a possible backup for Taurean Prince. Now, the cap space flexibility is interesting, and we'll go over that. So we already mentioned the reduced payroll of $7.2 million, the trade exception that you created with Caris LeVert. But what you also got was tax flexibility, because before this trade, the Detroit Pistons were right at the $165 million salary cap. I believe they were at 166.4, and you're only allowed to go up to 165. So this does save them quite a bit of money for flexibility to retain Jalen Duren in restricted free agency and possibly future moves. So they are currently $39 million sending salaries out between Caris LeVert, and Isaiah Stewart. Their total salary right now with 16 players on the roster, not counting Marcus Sasser, is 159.3. Luxury tax space is at 41.2. So when I look at this, like, they can re-sign Jalen Duren using bird rights, and I don't think they're gonna get that close to the salary cap floor, which is at $200 million. They're at 159.3 currently, so that is something to kind of keep an eye on with Jalen Duren. But they do still have some non-taxpayer mid-level exception. As you guys can see, we have 3.7. We'll get into why they only have 3.7. They do have trade exceptions with the Caris LeVert trade. The 8.7 trade exception does actually expire today on July 7th. That was from the Dennis Schroeder trade a year ago. Trade exceptions only last a year. So, excuse me, I'm not really sure if they used the trade exception with this Caris LeVert trade whatsoever. I'm not really entirely sure. They may have, because Caris was on a almost $15 million deal, and they're actually saving money. So they probably did. I'm kind of doing the math in my head, but Pistons still have 7 future first-round picks, 4 that are tradable, and they have 11 second-round picks after this trade with Caris LeVert. But a lot to break down with the trade, the players, the Ron Holland conversation, the trade exception, and kind of like where they're at in terms of just the salary cap. Again, I don't really foresee this actually signaling that they're going to make another big move. I just don't see it that way. I think the roster is the roster currently. If they did make a big move, I would be under the assumption that it might be a midseason trade, because you look at a lot of the contracts that they have, they can easily stack contracts and get up to a player in range that they're interested in. Not to say that they didn't try this offseason, you guys. They did. It's just a lot of teams just weren't interested in moving on from their players. Like, they tried Kyrie. Dallas said, we're not trading him. Conversation over. They asked about Kawhi. Kawhi's camp saying, hey, we're going to Toronto. Thank you for your interest anyways. I've heard conversations about Michael Porter Jr. Those conversations have died down. There's also been, conversations, like little whispers about KD, which I just think it's more a conversation and interest based. I don't really think there's actually like any real merit to it. But again, they've been linked to so many players, even Trey Murphy, for instance, which I don't see New Orleans trading him. I think it's just like a lot of smoke on New Orleans' end of actually wanting to deal him. Like, we hear every day, like, oh, we're okay with keeping him. So the Pistons have made calls and inquiring about getting a secondary player next to Cade Cunningham. It just hasn't happened yet. But you do have more depth now. You have more role players around Cade, which I know a lot of Pistons fans are upset with because they want a secondary scorer, secondary star next to him. Trajan in the front office have tried. Maybe they can still swing something. Maybe they can. But as of right now, you added a position of need, which was a backup four. Granted, Taurean Prince is a little bit undersized, but this offseason so far, I think they did address the ball handling aspect with drafting Abuka Corey, and you re-signed Danish Jenkins, and you have a lot more perimeter spacing now with all the players that we mentioned this past offseason. But let's get into segment 2, you guys. So segment 2 is going to be Bleacher Report rankings. Now, they made a top 10 list, which I thought was actually kind of early for them. And their top 10 list was post-offseason NBA power rankings. So we'll be going over each player involved in these power rankings. Let's start with number 1, which was the New York Knicks. I don't really have a problem with that. They just won the NBA championship, so they should be number 1. The San Antonio Spurs are right below them at number 2. Again, they were in the finals. The team the Knicks beat. OKC Thunder, no surprise there. Boston Celtics at number 4, I'm a little surprised by, given you just traded away Jaylen Brown. Like, I'm very surprised by that. Minnesota Timberwolves, they had a really big offseason, adding LaMelo Ball. They traded Naz Reid, traded Julius Randle. LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels and Rudy Gobert, that's kind of like their core. Should be interesting to see what they do in the West. But I think they've had a better offseason than Boston. Boston just made a cost-cutting move in their estimation, even though Paul George is on a larger contract. Paul George isn't going to be making close to $70 million at the end of his contract like Jalen Brown is. So that's interesting. You're the Detroit Pistons, number 6. So they have the Pistons in the top 10, number 6 in off-season power rankings, which we've been very underwhelmed with the offseason, but people over at Bleacher Report believe that the Pistons are actually having a pretty solid offseason on the marginally. So that was interesting to see. Denver Nuggets are right below them at number 7. Denver really has not done anything this offseason so far. It looks like they're going to trade Peyton Watson to the Clippers. The Clippers are the only real team that are like players for him, I guess, in a sign and trade situation. Miami Heat 8, which I'm surprised the Heat are 8, given they did trade for Giannis. Maybe DeMar DeRozan goes down there, or maybe he goes to Toronto, which was the next team at number 9. Again, I think Toronto should be higher on this list for trading for Kawhi Leonard and having a really good offseason as well. And then the Cleveland Cavaliers at number 10. I'm surprised the Cavs are at number 10. Their offseason's been really weird. I saw today they just inked Donovan Mitchell to a huge contract extension, which he's going to be making $70 million at one point, which it's like, man, contracts are getting so expensive. Like I remember when I was a kid, like KG and Kobe were making $30 million, and I thought that was so much. The new $30 million is $70 million, which is insane to think about, man. Like I can't. We're probably gonna get like our first like $100 million or $500 million contract pretty soon. I don't even know why I said $100 million. $500 million contract pretty soon. It's going to happen the way the salary cap is going up. Like it's just stupid money. But I was kind of interested to see that the Detroit Pistons were number 6 in that ranking. I'm sure some people will disagree with this list. That's why Bleacher Report makes it. It causes debate. It causes conversations. Celtics at 4 to me is just diabolical. I don't even know how you don't have the 76ers, because I think the 76ers have had one of the best off seasons in the East. Like you get Jalen Brown, you're getting Anthony Simons, you had a good draft and drafting Phylon. He was able to slip to you. Like they've had a really, really good offseason after getting a new general manager. Daryl Morey is no longer there, and they're kind of running like a competent organization again. But let me know what you guys think of the Bleacher Report rankings with the Detroit Pistons being 6. I'll put it on the screen again for you guys to see and just go through it. Knicks 1, Spurs 2, Thunder 3, Celtics 4, Timberwolves 5, Pistons 6, Nuggets 7, Heat 8, Raptors 9, Cavs 10. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think of the power ranking there. So let's get into segment 3. Isaiah Joe, we did get some contract details and how the Detroit Pistons were able to not only, make this acquisition with the Oklahoma City Thunder, but how this contract did get absorbed. So Yossi Goslin, who's a very good cap space analyst, definitely go follow him. The Detroit Pistons did make this official. It says, welcome to the 313. Isaiah Joe official. The Detroit Pistons announced today that the team has acquired Isaiah Joe from the Oklahoma City Thunder in exchange for 2 future second-round picks. Yossi Goslin tweeted that the Detroit Pistons have acquired Isaiah Joe on a standalone deal, meaning they're absorbing with their mid-level exception. They could have re-announced cap holds to absorb them with cap space, but that seems unlikely. They had 3.7 remaining in their mid-level exception. So I think a lot of people were wondering, how did the Detroit Pistons kind of get this deal done, right? And when you kind of look at Isaiah Joe, he was on an $11 million cap hit. Mid-level exception is very close to $15 million, so they have 3.7 remaining. They don't have any roster spots open. So unless there's another small marginal trade, you could sign another player on a $3.7 million mid-level exception if you wanted to. But that's how the Detroit Pistons were able to absorb Isaiah Joe's $11 million cap hit for this year. And then it's a team option going into the following season in 2027-28. So there's a lot of flexibility with Isaiah Joe, but I'm under the assumption that the Detroit Pistons want to keep him. He's very young. He's not even 30 years old. He kind of fits within the core, and he can grow with Cade Cunningham, Asar Thompson, and Jalen Duren. And that goes into our fourth segment, JD. So I want to give Kyle Metz a really big shout out. This does come from him. I just kind of made a graphic out of it. He says Detroit has until July 13th to unilaterally rescind the qualifying offer. So the qualifying offer, for you guys that don't know, is $9 million, and that would just be for a year. So they have until the 13th to rescind the qualifying offer. They have until October 1st to get Jalen Duren signed to a qualifying offer. So what to watch, Detroit can still work towards a long-term extension deal while the qualifying offer remains an option. So that is something to keep an eye on with the qualifying offer. Like, qualifying offer to me would be a spit in the face to Jalen Duren. Like, the biggest spit in the face you could actually offer him. Going from saying I want the close to the max, the 40 million, to conversations I've heard like between 35 million. Went from 35 million to 9 million is like just basically like, we don't really value you. Take the qualifying offer. Maybe someone will offer you something, in the summer of 2027. We just want you for one more year. I don't know if it's going to be coming to that. I'd be very surprised. I think they still do get a deal done. I think when we went over the cap space and how the Pistons did save money and generate cap space that way, they're going to use the remaining of their cap space with bird rights to re-sign Jalen Duren to a new extension. Now, is it going to be a 5-year extension, 4-year extension, 3-year extension? I'm not entirely sure. I think his camp does a 5-year extension to remain on the Detroit Pistons. Is it going to be for the initial $200 million that they were seeking, which would be $40 million annually? I'm not entirely sure. If I did have to take a guess, I think it's closer to 30 to 35 for him. But I did want to kind of talk about the key dates for the qualifying offer. Again, the Pistons have until July 13th to make up their mind if they actually want to go down that avenue with him. But again, that's to me, like, a QO would just be so disrespectful, you guys, like 100%. Let's get into our final segment, and it's Ugonna Onyenso. Like I mentioned at the top of the podcast, he did have a press conference with the Detroit Pistons yesterday. And the first clip is what he brings to the Detroit Pistons and how he feels about playing for an organization that does value defense. And this is what he had to say, you guys.
What can you share about your game, and what do you think you'll be able to bring to this organization?
My strengths on the court is like my defense, being able to block shots. And like the timing in the league is different from what it is in college, with 3 seconds and defensive 3 seconds and everything. So it's like, something that I got to learn, something that I got to get used to. But, being able to block shots, get a couple of steals on defense, that's what I bring to the table.
Kind of speaking on your defense, Virginia is a school that takes defense very seriously, and this is a team that prides itself a lot on this defensive identity. Just how do you feel like that matches your personality and how you play basketball?
I'm very heavy on defense. I'm like mostly defensive minded person. I feel like when I block shots, I get fun from doing that, stuff like that. So it's like being in a situation where it's like it's also a defensive minded program. Like it's a lot easier for me, because like I said, I take pride in playing defense, and I love a team that also takes pride in their defense. Like we help one another on defense, and I feel like that's how we build trust with one another.
So with that first clip, the first thing that I absolutely loved listening to was how much Ugonna Onyenso values defense. He's saying, it's fun to block shots. It's fun to protect the rim. He's a two-way contract. He's probably going to spend most of his time with the Motor City Cruise. But if he has a really strong showing with the Summer League games that are happening, I believe Thursday would be the first game on the 9th. He has a really good chance of possibly, having the front office have conversations about could this be center number 3? I know Tolu Smith signed a deal, but it was a non-guaranteed deal. Like, could they say maybe Ugonna could be our third center in the rotation on the active roster spot and just convert him to a deal? Maybe that's a conversation they could have, depending on how strong of a summer league he does have. But I loved hearing him talk about defense, that, he's really happy to play for an organization that also values defense. It kind of just feels like a good fit for a very late second round pick, 53rd pick that the Pistons did trade up to select. And I know a lot of you guys have been asking about him in terms of could this be a guy that we're looking to have on the active roster this upcoming season? I'm not really entirely sure, but it was really refreshing to listen to his press conference yesterday. If you guys haven't, definitely go check it out. But he really values defense, and I think a lot of Pistons fans like that. I've seen some Pistons fans saying he's another Theo Ratliff. And he kind of talked about his player comp and a player that he tries to mold his game after. And I think you guys will be interested to listen to the player that he likes to compare his game to.
Kind of either model your game after that guys that you've watched that you take their film in and kind of apply to what you're doing.
I'll probably say Derek Lively. He's a really good lob threat. And I feel like that's kind of what my game is like. And being able to do what I do on defense, like I said, it's more about the timing for me. I had my first practice today, kind of. I didn't get a block shot today. You feel me? But it's okay, what is it that the mistakes that I made? Where to correct those mistakes and everything. So it's all about the mindset for me. So we got practice tomorrow. We're gonna see what we're gonna do again. Learn from learn from today, and come in tomorrow with the same mindset. You feel me? But I'll say Derek Lively when it comes to love threat and being good at your role with the team.
So he compares himself to Derek Lively, which if you guys watch any Dallas Maverick games, he's a very good center, good shot blocker, lob threat, has shown the ability to stretch the floor a little bit. Now, that's who he likes to model his game after, his player comp. If he's a Derek Lively, I think it's a home run pick, because Derek Lively was a lotto pick from Dallas a year ago. You watch him play, he's already an elite shot blocker. He said that he's got to get used to the NBA with the defensive 3 seconds, which I think he will get used to. The lob threat, he's really good at catching those dump passes and catching lobs from his teammates. He's pretty mobile for a 7-footer as well. I think the 3-point aspect of his game, you saw it a little bit at Virginia in his senior year. Didn't really shoot a high percentage. Only shot, I think, around 26%. But I think there's something to unlock there with some possible pick and pop, setting picks at the top of the key and just popping from 3. I think that's something that I'll be interested to see if he does actually attempt any 3-point shots in the summer league. But I really like this kid, really humble. You can tell he's very serious about the game, saying hey, I didn't get a block shot in practice today. He was actually kind of upset about that he didn't get a block shot. And he's like, how can I get better and watch the film and get ready for practice tomorrow? Which I absolutely love. Again, late second round pick. Don't know how much stock we should hold into second round picks, because we haven't had the best luck with second round picks. I mean, you'd have to go back to the Spencer Dinwiddie, Bruce Brown days. That's the last time we've really hit on a second round pick. But I'm rooting for the kid. Hopefully he does have a good summer league and have a good career. And Ugonna Onyenso maybe is a rotation big in the future. I know Trajan Langdon took a picture with Ibuka, Corey, and Ugonna, and I've never seen Trajan Langdon smile that much in my life in any picture. He was smiling ear to ear with the picture with Ugonna Onyenso. Maybe Trajan really believes in the potential with him long term. Same with Ibuka, Corey. But I hope you guys did enjoy tonight's podcast. Before we do say goodbye, we have to hear from our sponsors over at the FanDuel Sportsbook. And right now with the NBA Future Bets, there are Eastern Conference winner odds. And the New York Knicks are the odds-on favorite to win the Eastern Conference. They're at a plus 290. The Boston Celtics are at a plus 440, which is hilarious to me. The Toronto Raptors are at a plus 750, along with the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Detroit Pistons. And the Philadelphia 76ers are at a plus 850. Again, I'm really surprised with the Philly in these rankings between Bleacher Report, even FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm surprised. I think people are sleeping on Philly. I know Embiid is, game time decision already, but you still have Maxey, you still have VJ Edgecombe, you're getting Jalen Brown. I think Philly is going to be a very good team in the East next year. I could totally see them being a top 5 team in the East. But let me know what you guys think of this Caris LeVert trade. Now it's a 6-team trade. The trade exception that the Pistons did generate, the cap space breakdown, the Bleacher Report rankings, having the Pistons as a top 6 team, the Isaiah Joe being into the mid-level exception, the Jalen Duren dates for qualifying offers. I like if they give him a qualifying offer, that's crazy. But I'll talk to you guys down below in the comment section. Like always, hope you guys are staying safe. And as always, go Pistons. Peace.